Welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
And I'm Sylvia Earle, oceanographer, explorer at National Geographic, and founder of Mission Blue.
And an ocean elder.
I said that.
I know, I just repeated it. And this is our show, Dive In, where we host informal and open conversations with the ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. Beautiful day today. These past few months have been just a completely tumultuous time for us. And hence, we're not really starting our dive-in season until February because of so many crazy things going on. And people just keep expressing that they're feeling, lost and adrift. And so we're just
We need a navigator.
Yes, and we're so grateful today. It's such a gift today to have with us a bona fide navigator, wayfinder in our midst, Nainoa Thompson of the Polynesian Voyaging Society. Welcome, Nainoa.
Aloha, welcome. Thank you. Well,
I like your background better than ours.
I know. We had a tumultuous day here too. So, Nainoa, you've been so widely recognized for your incredible body of work with the Hubbard Medal from the National Geographic Society, the Explorers Medal from the Explorers Club, and my favorite one, the Unsung Hero of Compassion Award from the Dalai Lama. That's an amazing
Among
one.
others.
Among others. So welcome again, and I'm going to try to share my screen at this point. This is always the biggest problem that we have here.
It's an adventure.
It is an adventure every
It's a
time
voyage.
that I can actually share the screen. But I'm so grateful that you've brought us some slides today and talk about the whole idea of voyaging and navigating and what it all means. So let's dive in.
okay, thank you. Well, I'm not a navigator, I'm a student, and all those medals were because we have a really amazing community that wants to recapture our traditions and now protect the oceans. And so I'm honored to be here because of that. And let me just say it, Sylvia is just one of my great heroes. And so it's always a privilege to be here. And I don't want to take up a lot of time, and I tried to cut down all these slides, but I got plenty, and I'm going to go eye blink real fast because I don't know who's in the audience, and I don't know if they know anything about Polynesian voyaging. So just to put the conversation, the most important thing is the conversation, but into some context of our work. So I'm going to go like really quick, and just know that I would graduate from high school not having any idea where the Hawaiians came from. Didn't know that we were descendants of the greatest navigators in the surface of the earth. Didn't know that our homeland is 2,500 miles away across the open oceans, and that was because we forgot. And it's a long journey. I blame. This is beginning the journey. I don't have the time, but I am a recipient and a witness to extraordinary leaders that would build a voyaging canoe, name it Hokulea, launch it in March 8, 1975, and then go change the world. Next slide. And the other person that we have got to bring into the webinar, if we're going to talk about anything about voyaging and navigation, is this man. His name is Pius Piailuk, and he's referred to as Mao. Mao means to be fierce, and he's from the tiny island of Satawal in the Western Carolinas in Micronesia. And he is considered the probably the last of the great masters. When Hawaii was searching for a navigator and they found him, he was one of 6 masters left and the youngest. And he did 2 amazing things that would change everything, history, culture, dignity of Native people. One, he would come and he would navigate Hokulea from Honolulu Bay, Maui in 1976. Next slide. And he would do this, he would take us across the oceans. It was like dragging us through the window of time into the old world. And what he taught us was to pay attention. Pay attention to nature, slow down and pay attention to nature. He navigated that whole trip just by the signs of what the ocean and the atmosphere and the life on the oceans gave him. He'd crossed the two biggest wind systems on the planet, northeast and southeast trade winds, and that whole collision into what Europeans considered the doldrum, the intertropical convergence zone. And Sylvia, I really want to talk to you about this because we view this meeting of the two big wind systems as really the engine of climate, the engine of life, that it pulls up plankton from the deep seas, and it starts circulation of heat. And it's just one of the few many things that we need to teach about how extraordinary this planet Earth is, and how life that we enjoy, we take such for granted. And so he was the naturalist that would drag us there. Next slide.
So this vessel, the Hokulea, was a recreation of the early voyaging canoes, right?
It was.
And just that construction itself and recovering the art deeply embedded in the science of what works in the open sea using materials that they're not.
It's just an incredible design, and just knowing what can survive, and those convergence zones, the heavy stormy seas, and to think that you have that ability to recreate these.
It's a sea creature.
It is. It's almost ropes and natural materials too.
Yeah, there's 5 miles of rope on Hokulea and no metal pieces holding it together. It's all lashed, and that's a really good point. I mean, they brought together painters, they brought anthropologists, they brought historians, they brought authors of research and archaeologists, and they brought marine architects to come up with looking at because we're imagining the vehicle, the spaceship, and it was so amazing for me to be. I was in my teens then. And to watch this revolution of bringing back dignity to these great ocean people. But this is arrival into Tahiti. It was 31 days later, Mao finds Tahiti. Imagine if you're standing on the beach of Waikiki, and imagine you can look over the edge of the horizon to Tahiti, and imagine you can see the west end of Tahiti and the east end. It's less than half a degree on the compass.
Yeah.
2,400 miles. All by nature. And then 17,000 Tahitians would come, larger than half the population, because these are our family. These are we call ohana. This is cousins, and everything changed that day that Mao came. But it was been a long road, though.
You could just feel the spirit of those people
and the energy, the excitement, and the real joy.
Yeah, it was. We were in English asking children to get off the canoe because there were so many on it that they were sinking the stern, and we had to take it back away. But because this wasn't our canoe, it was theirs. They have their orators, they have their stories, they know the navigators, they know the history, but they don't have the canoe. So when this canoe came, Hokulea was theirs. It was changed the world. Yeah.
Navigators have to have something to navigate.
That's right.
Yep, that's right.
So is it mostly just curiosity? Because people do ask, is it a lot of it obviously is to do with, looking at the stars, but as you're talking about, kind of working with nature, do some of the wayfinders and navigators, do they follow some of the sea animals as well, like the large migratory species, or are they explain more about how they're, use the whole body of the ocean in the navigation process?
And I'm still a student, but in my training, I had 28 months that I lived with Mao, and he said, I give you everything. The ocean showed you everything, but it'll be 20 years before you'll see. He says, everything you need to know to get to your destination is in nature. The question is, can you see it? And
Right.
he would, and it's a long story about his perspective about teaching, and when do you teach nature? And I'll just make this very simple so we don't run out of time. Younger, the better, and getting our children immersed in nature is really one of the best investments we have in protecting humanity in the long term. So
No
so the
child left behind.
yeah. If you can imagine, navigation is it's the heavens, it's sun, moon, stars, planets, where they rise and where they set, certain alignments. And then there's the whole atmosphere of reading the wind. And much of the work is identifying and taking clues from clouds. And so the atmosphere is really important. And then the ocean waves. Like he was saying, because if it's cloudy, 100%, you can't see stars, you got to navigate by the waves. And if
I know,
yeah.
I remember hearing you say once, to know a wave, you must become the wave.
Yeah.
It's
When
like-
I had navigated down to Tahiti in 1980, well, not me, when we navigated down to Tahiti and we came back, Ma would be going home for the first time in 28 months. He never left us. And he sat me down packing his one little bag that all that mattered to him. It's one bag of clothes. And he said, you did okay. He said, if you want someone to know everything, send your son because you're too old. And then he said, yeah, I give you everything. The ocean showed you everything. But he said his grandfather selected him to be the navigator for the future at age 1. So he was put in tide pools on his tiny little island to play with nature, smell salt, hear the bird, touch sand, and just play. And on a really old age of 5, he was on the voyaging canoe with his grandfather. And Ma would say with great love, not with child abuse, but when he said the wave come and lift the canoe up and the canoe go up and down, I get sick. He tie my hands and throw me overboard and drag me over the canoe, drag me behind the canoe. And Ma would say, this is the gift where his grandfather gave him, because when he put him in the water, he could go inside the wave. When he goes inside the wave, he becomes the wave. When he becomes the wave, then he's navigated. There is no separation from Mao, from the heart of nature. He's the lightning, he's the cloud, he's the wave. And that's what it is to be a navigator. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just babbling.
It's beautiful, but
Well,
yeah, and then Mao came back for 25 years to train us, and then we sailed far in the Pacific, probably around 200,000 miles total, and throughout many places in the Pacific. But there would be another navigator that would change the course of voyaging forever, and so Mao's teaching carries on, but it also evolves. Things change to the changing time. And next slide. And it really begins with this slide. It would be astronaut William Anders grabbing a camera and taking a photograph on Apollo 8 when it ran around the moon on the island Earth as it was rising out of the horizon. So it's almost like, it's like the island was seeking a pull out of the sea, but in this case, it was the Earth. And as you guys know, that would be claimed, the beginning of the global environmental conservation movement. But what it did, it inspired. And next slide.
we often open with this slide just to remind people that the world is blue. But
Yeah.
you had it
That's
too
an island.
at this time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of my best friends that I met, and it's a long story, but I'll keep it short. He's we call it Keiki. He's from our land, Ku'aina. He stands on it. He's a warrior, and he fought for what was right, and it was really the earth. And his name is Lieutenant Colonel Lacey Beach. And next slide. And he flew the shuttle program. He was actually the lead pilot for the Thunderbirds, the top elite teams and flight teams in the country. He was an amazing guy. Next slide.
It's logical that you two have bonded.
Exactly.
We had the best time ever. He loved these canoes. And the first time he came down to him, he just said to everybody, he goes, thank you for taking me sailing today, because today I'm going to understand what the definition of exploration really is. And so we knew we were going to be great friends. Next slide. Yeah, and
Yes.
we used to cross out one date on the year, and he and I would go rent a car illegally in Hilo on the Big Island and drive up to the black lava of Mauna Loa, so it would absorb all light and bring stars close, and it'd just be a night to dream with the responsibility of his belief that young people need to know the power and the importance of exploration. And so
Yes.
he was trying to link educationally Hokulea and the shuttle program. And but those moments were inspiring. They were hard. He had this almost rage in him. And next slide. When the conversation would go to the earth, when he he'd talk about, you can't imagine how beautiful the island Earth until you see the whole thing from space. And you have no idea of how complex the living systems are and the Earth systems themselves. And we need to understand those things. And but he would talk about things like, we're changing the Earth, humanity.
Absolutely.
It's going to turn around and change us, and we don't know what to do. This is back in the 90s, and so I believe that Sylvia knows, but that's not the total equation. And next slide. And then he pushed me, and he planted a seed. He says, you can't protect what you don't understand, and you won't if you don't care, and you can't do it by yourself. Take Hokulea around the world. It's planting a seed of an idea. And Sylvia, Liz, that's where it came from. Those conversations, saying Hokulea needs to touch the earth, and the earth needs to touch Hokulea. And
so outrageous. He would actually presume to take that open window and sail around the world.
Yeah.
But
it was the best ever.
Vision, and to make that come true.
Absolutely. One of my favorite Nainoa isms is where you said you need to do what you can't do, but you believe that you must. And in the hardness, in the difficulty is where we grow. And it's just such a profound words to
Well, that's
live by.
exactly what happened to us. Lacey pushed us, we knew he was right. Next slide. Yeah, unfortunately, the Surgeon General, space canoe, didn't pick up the mole on his back, and by the time they figure out his melanoma, he's in stage 4, and pretty sick guy. And then it was late September 1995. I would get a phone call from his wife. They were living in Houston at NASA, and just said, you need to come up today. And so I flew up, and that day I got there the next morning, and I went into Lacey's house. There must have been 100 people there, and it was dark and sad and depressed, and I couldn't find Lacey. So I asked Alice, where is he? She says, he's in the bedroom waiting for me. And so I went in. He was full of fluid and couldn't walk. And we had a long talk about the one side of him saying, I'm going to beat this, but on the other side, he said, you make 3 promises to me today, Nainoa. And he was really serious. And he said, the first promise, you must listen to the new language on the earth. It's climate change. It's sustainability. It's the new language that people don't know. He says, you need to listen to the words hypoxia and dead zones and the whole myriad of climate change and sea level rising. He says, we're changing it. You need to listen to the language. And that was key promise. And then the other one was, you promised me you're going to sail Hokulea around the world because the world's going to need it and Hokulea is going to need it. And then he said, and then build a school for the island Earth. He said, I don't know how you're going to do it, but build it, but it's got to be global. promised me, and I know these 3 promises. And I said, okay. And then what happened was I went home, and then he died 6 days later. And
Wow.
and then we would get together as voyaging leaders once a year as a summit to see what we're going to do for the following years. And at the top of the agenda was always the seed of the idea of a worldwide voyage. And my community, they're explorers. They want to go, and they take high risk, but they're rational people. And we would talk about how inspiring Lacing was. Let's go. But when the conversation turned to risk, then it went, you start bringing up the hurricane or the pirate or the mosquito or the violence or the rogue wave of South Africa, things we don't understand. And we would vote for 13 years. We'd vote no. Because it was too dangerous. The risk was too high. April 1st, 2008, we had a meeting, and it's because of the language is now yelling at us. Before it was quiet, nobody was really hearing it. Now it's yelling at us. And that's when Liz, the question about going around the world wasn't whether we were going to go. We had to go, even though we didn't know how. And so the question really wasn't whether we're going to go or not. The question was, what's more dangerous? The pirate, the rogue wave, the mosquito, the hurricane, or staying tied to the dock because you know.
Yep.
And it's similar to climbing in the shuttle, man. I mean, you must be thinking that through. And so what's more dangerous? And when we thought about the security of our children, there was no question. So it took 6 years for us to train to figure out how to do it. And we trained hard, but in the process, we searched every square inch of that route that's going to keep us safe, through Nova Scotia, through the Great Lakes, through South Africa. We went through, and in the process, we did what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to go learn. And that was all because of Lacey. Next slide.
So the danger is really not going.
Yeah, that's for us. It is because if you know that you need to go, then the only issue is figuring out how to do it, and that's where exploration is exponentially important. It's figuring it out, so we trained really hard 6 years. Next slide. I'll go through it quick. I know it's taking up too much time, and we train hard, and we focus on young people because they are the ones that got to navigate past us. Next slide. And then we made a map that would be meaningful to mission, but that we could actually do. It was 37 months, 40,000 miles. It went to 18 countries, 422 ports, and we took well over 500 plus people on the canoe along the way. So it was, but this voyage was really at the core of the heart of exploration. It was, you need to go learn, you need to figure out. And one of the big questions Lacey told me is, Nainoa, go find out whether humanity still cares enough to make the change. Because the course we're on right now is not going to work. It's a wrong flight path. It's a wrong sail plan. And so real quick, it was amazing the places we would go. We were in Quebec, for Christ's sake, trying to go up to this place called Kawanake, where this retired nun made the first indigenous immersion language school, that we needed her to come to Hawaii to testify to our legislature and education leaders, and she did. And we went up 62 rocks over 2 mountain ranges, and to just aloha her and what she had done to move the importance of keeping our language alive. And we met her, but I mean, it was just such an amazing, and it's all okay if you're doing it for the right reasons, and everybody will do it and give everything if it's for the right reasons, no matter how hard it is. And so it was just, we kept our promises, but the voyage was really about discovery. It's about uncovering. It's about learning. Next slide. Yeah, so we just turned west, and
Little
kept
speck,
going and ended up in the
tiny
same place.
speck in that big ocean.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, and you look at the globe and you look at the Pacific side of the globe,
the blue
the
face.
blue face of the planet, and you know, here it is. It's
It's
really
all about the ocean.
vast.
It's all about
Yeah.
the ocean. Yeah. And next slide.
What's
couple of
under the
things, you know,
canoe?
exactly. And this, I brought these for you to tell you that we did go underneath the canoe. I promise. So went to places
Good.
where it was unimaginably full of life, and the apex guys were there, and I mean, there's 42 sharks on this one side, and we were trying to get up the anchor chain back in the boat. It was a kind of bad idea, but it was a beautiful idea because it's full of life. And then next slide, compared to,
Oh, yeah.
we've gone to countries where you can walk on it. You know, it's just we have so much work to do.
We've seen this so many times where, you know, where the trash is just dumped directly into the ocean or right along a river that, you know, feeds into the ocean. And this is really what you're faced with. It's just,
Well, we can get out of the ocean, but creatures in the sea cannot.
Yeah.
It's their home. It's our
Yeah.
home too, but
well, increasingly, this sort of thing is coming back
to
to
haunt
us, to haunt us.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep. Next slide. And this is the cool slide. We're in Galapagos, and meeting with the people there, those who are protecting wildlife, and they said this comment. It's amazing that only 1% of the land area is where we live, and the rest is for nature. And this is one of our crew members that just expresses that kind of importance of that understanding to the relationship, and just it tells me ultimately in the end we have to have trust in nature, and nature has to have trust in us. And it was such an extraordinary place to learn what other people are doing right. And I know Galapagos has a lot of issues, but at the core, we learn a lot from them. And anyway,
Well, do unto iguanas as you would have iguanas do unto you.
exactly.
Treat them with respect and dignity. And other
Next
people.
slide.
Ah, look at this. Oh,
Yeah, we came home, and then it was pretty amazing. And the guys ahead of the news guys were saying it would be the largest viewed event in Hawaii's history, the arrival. But what they said was, yeah, there's plenty of people on the beach, but that's not where the numbers are. The numbers were those who were watching in the telescope, and the vast majority of the audience, which I would suggest is what we were trying to get to. Do people care? And so this canoe symbolizes renewal. And so they're saying the numbers were astronomical. So, but what we didn't do is we didn't sustain something that really has to create the kind of massive change that we have to create. But it allowed us to keep our promises to Lacey, but there was this piece missing, and that is protection of something that you care about.
right.
And we on the voyaging community, Pacific wide, have talked many times from Melanesia, Micronesia, Polynesia, 28 million square miles of oceans. And the agreement is the oceans. It's the oceans. We cannot lose that connection of our ancestry or our health of the oceans. Otherwise we'll die. And so we're going to take another voyage that I wanted to introduce. Next slide. And yeah, I mean, you know, we're all about global education, linking through partners who can achieve that. Next slide. And it's, you know, in the end, it's just about this island in space, this beautiful, beautiful, extraordinary island. And it's the only one we got. And we've got to learn how to take care of it. It's very simple. I sound like I'm preaching, I guess I am, but it's that simple. So thank you for your time.
Here we go. I'm going to stop the share for a minute and go back. Here we go. But, you know, it really is all about, I think, getting the youngsters involved, and then, you know, protecting these big swaths of ocean. We talk about protecting the high seas and the swimways between places. And, why is it such a challenge just to get, something that should be very basic done, like the high seas protection?
Well, the cause for hope, I think, is what we know now that we could not know. The view of Earth from space was not available when I was a kid. And we're so lucky as 21st century humans. We're the beneficiaries of all that has been discovered in the past, but knowing that the greatest era is of discovery, it's still out there. We're beginning to understand the magnitude of our ignorance of what we don't know. But the kids know what we couldn't know. I mean, it's there now, but that gives this generation, the coming generation, a jump start. So much that was taken for granted, we now know we can't. We have to respect the laws of nature, like duh.
Yeah.
But I think the wake-up call in 2020, as sobering as it has been, may have achieved at least the understanding that we're all vulnerable, we're all in this together, and that nature, the laws of nature rule.
Yeah.
Think of ourselves as the big boss of the planet, but
Little virus.
Big virus.
Yeah. Adaptive virus. So it really is giving us a run.
We have a lot of young people that are getting training for this next voyage in the pandemic. It's been hard, and I don't think it's safe. And but they come down, they're busy, they're educated, and I keep questioning, well, what are you doing going out of these canoes? Why would you waste your time over here? And they never answer that kind of question. But I would say, well, why is voyaging meaningful? And they turned to me and they said, finally, because your generation changed education, and we know way more than you. But in the knowing, all we're feeling is not knowledge, we're feeling responsibility.
Mhm.
So they want to make sure, and this is like beautiful, they say, we want to make sure that our generation make sure the next one knows more than us. That's why we're here. It was just like shockingly beautiful. And I mean, if that's not inspiring, our young people are just amazing. I mean, they're just amazing. Yeah. Anyway.
But we still have a chance for sure, but only if we take what we know and put it into action, which is exactly what you're doing. Really, it's not sitting back and thinking the world will take care of itself, or that somebody else will do whatever it takes.
Yeah. And tell us about the idea of the Third Canoe as a virtual platform.
This next,
I have this video if you want, Liz, and you said it's 6 minutes long, so but it explains that probably better than I, if you want. Either way, or we can leave it for later.
and then we can talk about it after.
Yeah, we can talk about it, and then I know we've got a lot of questions that are starting to flow in. But let's go.
We'll get more after this video.
Okay, now you're gonna ask me to share a screen for twice in one episode. You're killing me.
These miracles of these voyagers that started to discover all these islands, it's like the eighth wonder of the world. How did they do that so far back in time? There was two things of genius in Polynesia. Someone needed to build a vehicle, a spaceship of our ancestors that could sail far, when no other culture on the earth was sailing far. The other is you had to navigate to find a way to and from. The navigator needed to be able to see, it needed to be able to hear, it needed to be able to feel. Every day that navigator would maybe making 5,000 observations of a wave or a bird or a star. It would make 500 choices about trim, course, steering, and then it would make 2 decisions. At sunrise and sunset, in the color of light of dawn and dusk, it would make decisions about where are you on the earth. I think we are where we are on the planet today, where human beings are changing the earth. It is now turning around and changing us, and we don't know what to do because we disconnected. The greatest thing we need to do is become family of the earth again, family of nature. The greatest naturalist I've ever met was my teacher, Pwo, who transcends the observation of nature to what he calls the magic. It is about when the human existence becomes part of the family of nature, that you are nature. The thing about Mao, the day he was leaving, packing his bag, he sat me down and said, "Okay, Nainoa, I give you everything. And the ocean showed you everything, but it'll be 28 years before you'll see. If you want someone to know everything, send your son because you're too old." That's a crucial piece of cracking the code. And it's when we teach our children. When do you learn the connection? When do we learn verbal language? When do we learn the language of nature? And that's the language we need to immerse ourselves. We need to bring it back. We need schools of nature immersion globally. And that's why we're voyaging. To just getting general awareness to half the population of the earth, getting understanding to a quarter population of the earth, and getting the sense of values back to 1 billion people. And then going down the road from values, you need to reinstate respect. Then you need to reinstate care. And then from there, where values are now moving to action, that's when you need to help strengthen a community and a culture that's global, not based on race, but based on values. Hokulea takes us into the wild. The voyage itself will take about 400 crew members from, we're hoping, about 26 countries. Diversity and equity and access matters. That this is not just a Hawaiian voyage, this is a global voyage. We'll be at sea for about 450 days and we'll be on land for 950 days. Every day is a story of ideas and people. You cannot make this movement by yourself. You have to have communications and education platforms that can get it to the billions. And then you need to have partners that are gonna essentially strengthen the stories, help us to access communities. We will probably go to maybe 220 indigenous territories to make sure that these people have voice. Hokulea, Hikianalia will do its part. It won't do it by itself. You need the platforms and you need the partners. And that whole voyage of connecting to the earth and connecting to these people who can make change, we're working just as hard on those partners and those platforms as we are in getting Hokulea ready to go. When you try to imagine and add up how much goodness people are actually doing as individuals, not collected, not organized, not institutionalized. We should never do that. Just let that wave happen, let that movement happen. We're in the race between those who are essentially hurting the earth and those who are healing it. To me, it's not about hope anymore. We don't have time for hope. We need to begin getting started in believing that we can make that change.
You know, I heard President Obama say once that our highest priority must be to keep the world safe for our children.
Yeah.
I think he was thinking guns and things, but words, keeping the world safe for our children. And I have grandchildren. And I keep thinking about all that did exist when I was a child that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But there's still a chance.
Yeah.
We still have 10% of the sharks.
Yeah.
There's still some tuna left in the ocean. Half the coral reefs are still in pretty good shape. Kelp forests, you name it. You know, this is the moment when it's crunch time. Either we'll make it or we won't, depending on what we do right now. I mean, the best chance ever is now, because of what we now know that we couldn't know before. If we didn't know we have problems, we really would be in trouble. But now we know, and we also know what to do about it. And your message, I mean, I think we do need hope, but it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
It means that you don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, so we're doing what we can to participate on what is essential. And I come from a really extraordinary community that's growing in the Pacific. And so the Pacific, the circumnavigation of the Pacific is interesting that it's more than half the salt water of the planet, and the planet's 70% is water. And you think it's going to be a short voyage compared to the worldwide voyage. Wrong. It's actually longer in time and distance because it's so big. But it's really our home. It's our home. It's our ancestral home. So the trick with that third canoe is to be able to make sure it's global, because you know that third canoe should be like a voice for the poet or for the musician, for the scientist, for the educator, for anybody that wants to share goodness about this earth and be positive. But at the same time, you know, the scientist in Greenland who's measuring unprecedented amount, and in a nanosecond you could be in Majuro on the third canoe, where children right now are writing poetry for dying islands, because it's connected. It's connected by the ocean. There's one ocean. And so, I mean, Sylvan, nobody knows that connection better than you, about the total system of currents and transport. So we have 5 names for oceans, but it's really one. And so the third canoe allows us to be quick and fast. It's interesting. We can move at light speed with the third canoe, this virtual canoe, to get astronomically more stories it can with the smaller canoes. But actually in the smaller canoes, we are thinking about and starting to depower our sails, reducing sail area. And one of the reasons is because we want to slow down. That somehow we need to, for us to really understand our relationship to the oceans, you need to slow down and be able to pay attention as a navigator or a student as a navigator. And so that now the goal is never the landfall, the goal is the journey. And sometimes I think that's what humanity has to do. It's got to slow down. It's got to slow down and pay attention to its impact. You know, that us racing around, we're racing for the natural resources, we're racing for our national security issues. And if that drives the speed of what we're doing without understanding our impact and taking, therefore, responsibility. So intentionally, we're actually slowing our canoes down to spend more time on the journey opposed to coming to the landfall. That makes sense?
It really does. It's, you know, we see the exact same thing happen. Like when you're out hiking, you know, you'll have the person that has to get from here to there. You got to cover 10 miles and, you know, this space of time.
They don't see anything.
But they're versus the people that are stopping to, you know, turn over a rock. They have their hand lens, or stopping to see what bird is that chirping, you know, and they really getting more engaged. And we see it in scuba diving too. If you go diving with this one, you're not going to get, you're going to be around that same coral head for the whole dive because she's looking at all the. In the meantime, the rest of the group is all over the place and they're trying to cover as much territory as possible during the dive, and they come back and they really haven't seen very much compared to, having seen like the little goby and the worms and that particular parrotfish and everything else that is right there.
Yeah.
So it really is about being, taking the time.
Well, I love the fortuitous collision, really, of 21st century technology that enables communication globally, coupled with this deep connection and respect for who we are, where we've come from, and maybe make it possible to get a better idea of where we might be going.
Yeah.
When are you gearing? When are you packing your bag?
Well, we're going to meet
When
you
you push-
in Aotearoa in May. So,
Oh, right.
I mean, COVID
Yes.
has slowed us down, but it hasn't stopped us. So we're if it's safe for the Tahitian community, if it's safe for our crew members, we're planning to go to Tahiti in April, and in May there's two big events. One event is, and they're both at a place called Tapatapuatea. It was the by far the most recognized powerful school of navigation in the Pacific, and that's even my father's lineage. It comes from that navigator's family. But what happened about, I don't know, I'm not a historian, but there was an alliance of Polynesian leadership that would come and they would come together at Tapatapuatea. This is about an island on the island of Raiatea, about 140 miles west of Tahiti, at this sacred place called Tapatapuatea. And anyway, the alliance was broken because there was a murder around, I think, around the 13th century, and it involved the Tahitians and the Maori from New Zealand. But what happened was the elders of that marae, that area, put a couple and said no more alliance. And then, but it had to have lifted it if a Maori kuna would come back through a sacred pass, and they have. And so it lifted the tupu, but we didn't reinstate the alliance. Going to Tapatapuatea, this trip we are, to get people together to talk about the oceans. And then the second one is what we'll be joining you at the Gump facility at Aotearoa, and you guys will shape a declaration. And the Tahitian said only the navigators can carry that onto that marae, so we're honored to help. And so it's this beginning of the meshing of science with traditional worldview and the legacy of, imagine that on Mao's Island, they were there for 4,000 years and the island's only a mile long. I mean,
Wow.
if they didn't figure out sustainability, who would? And so
That's right.
that legacy is so important to incorporate into the wisdom and the values of how we make decisions. And so we're going to go to Tahiti, we're going to come back, and then we're going to go to, we're offering Hokulea to every school child in Hawaii from July through December, so that we have permission from our ancestral family in Tahiti, permission from our children, and in May of 2022, we're going to ship Hokulea to Tacoma. And then we'll take it up the Intercoastal Marine Highway to Alaska, and then go to Russia, essentially clockwise around the whole Pacific. And it'll be about 4 years, and just to make connections about this oceans. And the third canoe, the virtual canoe, is crucial to having quality, capturing stories quality, and having scale to get it out to the earth. And so we're working with many partners to be able to help us to do that. And so we're planning to go. We were supposed to go this year up to Alaska and start this with our friends. We've known them for 30 years. They gave us the trees to build our second canoe, and but they really advise us not to come until their rural communities can gain their health back. And so,
Yeah.
respect. In British Columbia, it was the same, So we're just waiting for the right time.
That makes all the sense in the world right now. So shall we dive into some of the questions and
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
and apparently a lot of people weren't able to see the video, I think, because maybe the file size was too big or something, but it wasn't, they could hear it, but they couldn't see it. So it's in the
Oh
chat.
my God. Sorry.
So everybody can click it there and see it, and I'll post it separately as well.
Great.
Okay.
So Kim is, well, you've kind of answered this, but she's asking, are there any considerations with a return to the north? So I think you said you're headed back there.
Yeah. So to the north, you know, what we're really fascinated in, and Sylvia, I'm going to ask for help, is we're really fascinated on trying to understand the link between the poles and the equator, the ocean. What is that relationship? Why is it so important? How is the distribution of heat that is magnificently done by this earth? Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to live here the way that we do. And so that the north and the south is something that we want to go. Hokulea is only 3 feet above sea level. So, you know, it's you got to be really careful. So there's places that we can't go there, but the Third Canoe can.
That's
And
right. We also need to go deep, Nainoa, because what we see at the surface is just the surface. And this distribution of heat and cold, you know, as you dive down into the ocean, it gets cold. Most of life on Earth, it's such a big thought, lives in cold water, and it's dark. And the pressure gets deeper, it gets greater the deeper you go. So that at the deepest place, it's like 16,000 pounds per square inch of weight on whatever's down there. And for us, that seems hostile, but that's friendly for life on Earth for the most part. And, you know, all of Earth is dark some of the time, but to live in the dark all of the time, except for the bioluminescent creatures that look like stars in the sky, this is such a wonderful time to bring together north, south, east, west, and from the surface to the greatest depths. We could not do it before, but we can now. And it's really seeing the whole world in 3 dimensions, high in the sky. Your friend Lacey, I mean, the counterpart is your friend Don Walsh.
Yeah.
And others.
The deep thinkers.
So it's really exciting. If you could be born anytime, I mean, this is really the moment to be just savoring the joy of what we know, and also the opportunity to do something that we could not do before. We just didn't know enough. We still don't, but we know enough to know that we got to hurry.
Yeah.
I mean, slowly.
Yeah. You know, when I hear someone suggest that the era of exploration is over, I think it's actually just begun in many ways. That you know what we're looking for? We're trying to understand, how does the Earth systems work? Because if you don't know the systems, you can't protect it. And you know, that the heat and circulation and the distribution of the thing that's most important. I mean, remember we were in New York, Sylvia, and we had a chance to pick a sea creature, and then they put it in the Times Square thing. They're running it around when I was in meeting, and you picked the plankton, the phytoplankton. And
Oh, I know.
how come? And then now you think about it, I believe the greatest environmental issue of the 21st century is to protect the health and well-being of the oceans. Because if you don't protect that, the Earth cannot protect us. It's a human issue. I mean, this planet has been through so much climate change from the time it was born 4.3 billion years ago. I mean, it knows change, but we're the ones that are not prepared for it. And so
We're fragile.
yeah, to understand the systems, I think, is such an important
Got it right. Yes.
way that we get it into the schools of kids that can use the systems to protect itself.
Yeah.
So the question about going north, absolutely, we want to be global through that through that virtual Third Canoe. And I'm not smart enough to know what all the possibilities are. And boy, I do not have the technological background to look at what we can imagine. But we need people to help out. We need the ocean elders to support it just with their stories, their work, and we can create legacy of genealogy of amazing stories. But we can also get the right people to help aim us, and we need a whole new generation of navigators that are going to take the hardest challenges we have and figure out with their imagination and their education and their innovation to figure out a new sail plan for the earth. And so the Third Canoe is only trying to be a tool to bring that together. That's all. Yeah.
Well, we've got a follow-on question here from Skylar. He says he's in the Bronx, he's in 8th grade. How is he going to learn to navigate when he's stuck in New York City?
New York City, I met young people in a school called the Harbor School. I met them. They can't see the stars, they can't see the planets, but in the school, they shifted the school to have its purpose was to clean New York and the Hudson River. And the way that they were going to do it was to plant 1 billion oysters. They did the mathematics, they did the science, and they figured out if we can get 1 billion oysters back into our environment, it will filter water fast enough to be able to clean this place. And to me, that's the navigators. I mean, you may not be a navigator on a voyaging canoe. And if you do want to be a navigator on a voyaging canoe, call us up. We have schools here in Hawaii and other parts of the Pacific. But we need 10 million navigators that are going to be in harbor schools. They're going to be replanting oysters. They're going to be cleaning and restoring place. So I was in New York, and I agree. Honestly, New York kind of really scares me because it's like yikes. But
I agree.
and standing on this giant trailer they had of oysters that they were growing someplace in some stream, and they were replanting it back in to use the natural filters of the oysters, and they just need 1 billion. And they did the math.
Yeah.
I saw navigators in New York all the time. Yeah.
That's good. So we have another question. How is the school available to children in Hawaii?
Yeah, okay. So we are having conversations because honestly, if our children are not with us and we don't provide them some meaningful education, we can't go. That's permission. We can't leave Hawaii, going to go and promote something in somebody else's countries if we haven't had the foundation built here. So we are in the process of working with our best educational institutions to actually, we already are videotaping many things. It's in three pieces: legacy, the genealogy that honors the Lacey's, that honors the canoe builders, Mao, and the many others. And so that's a 50-year project. In May 1st, 2026, Hokulea will be 50 years since their first voyage.
Wow.
But in the next 4 years, we're building this bridge of education and educational tools but the aim of that is really having young people turn the chapter and look at the next 50 years. And what does navigation look like? What does voyaging look like in the lens of them using this canoe and its Third Canoe and its possibilities to figure out some of the most pressing issues we have in our. So schools need to look like getting them prepared. And so what we're doing with, and I don't want to speak too much about this without consent from our big institution, but no, we're working with some of the most powerful educational institutions in the country that have actually global access through virtual education. I know it's not the best, but they have committed to, as long as what we create and we put on, they can make it available to anybody on the earth that's got a device for free if it's non-credit. Because our side was, we don't want to send out education that is going to be so costly that only those who have the financial resources can access
Sure.
against those who cannot. Because all we're going to do is make it worse. We're going to widen the gap. But these
Right.
institutions are behind us. But to your question, where are we starting? We're starting here with our big institutions, primarily Kamehameha schools and the University of Hawaii system. And so they are working really hard to look at that legacy piece and documenting that, looking at what we're going to do in the next 4 years, circumnavigation Pacific, and then opening the possibilities of what is the future going to look like. But that has to be defined by young people. And so by our aim is that we have, I don't know this technology stuff, but if you go search the Hokulea website, whatever, you'll find stuff. I know it's there. But by August of this year, August 1st of this year, the documentation teams that we're having collecting these stories, Kamehameha is targeting getting curriculum actually online for both private schools in Hawaii and for public schools to actually get two things: graduation credit for students, three things: getting to early college, so that by the time they get out of high school, they're already entering junior year. And then the third thing is the high priority of working with, and we're working with the College of Education that trains every single public school teacher in Hawaii, getting to those tools that we have that can have scale. And so that getting teachers involved to exponentially reach our kids in Hawaii. And in July 15th to December 15th, we'll be doing a statewide sail to the main 8 Hawaiian islands, going to the 6 islands that have schools, and the 285,000 school kids, in theory, are going to have access to the canoe. And in access to the canoe, we will be able to give them access to curriculum. So that's kind of what we're working on.
Excellent. So I know we're a little bit past the top of the hour. Are you okay to stay for a few more questions, or how's your time today?
I feel very privileged to be here. I'll stay here as long as Sylvia and you and the audience. I'm here.
All right, we'll take a few more questions then. William says that ecosystem services seem to be a brand new catchword to bring awareness about the importance of island Earth. Do you have any comments on this idea? Earth ecosystem services.
No, this tends to translate to what's it worth to have a tree?
True. Yeah.
And for me, there's a place for that, because so many people think in terms of
4 feet of lumber.
Yeah, numbers and
Dead fish.
assigning a dollar, put a price on everything. But in the end, it's what's life all about? Insurance companies can and do put a dollar sign on a human life, but that's not the point. It's how do we value nature for more than the ecosystem services? What is it that inspires us to really care and show respect and treat life as a miracle, and all forms of life with dignity and respect? So I do see that it's useful for accountants to have ecosystem services and put a big balance sheet up there, and people put a number about how many trillions of dollars the ocean is worth. But I just try to imagine Earth without the ocean. If you can't breathe, your money is not really the point.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know how to really answer that question. I don't know enough about ecological systems. But I agree. What I
dead fish have value, but
yeah,
but live fish.
Yeah, and usually a higher value.
There's a part of my life that always forces me back to this notion of understanding your home. And that was because I was born and raised in Hawaii on my grandfather's dairy farm. My mom always took us out into the forest. She was scared of the ocean. But at my grandfather's dairy, there was a milkman that would deliver milk bottles because we had no grocery stores back then. I'm like really old, by the way. And but he gave me the best gift ever. That without that gift, I don't know where I would be at all. And I don't know what I would value. I don't know what I'd believe. But he gave me a 4-foot piece of bamboo to go fishing in Maunalua Bay where I live, and I witnessed just. I was fell in love with the ocean because it was so full of life. But I have two 13-year-old twins, and it's really hard to convince them that they should fall in love with this reef because we've done so much damage to it. So that story is really important to me because, I mean, hey, Sylvia, I mean, I don't know, but why would we hedge a bet on a tipping point? Meaning, what if we push degradation, push the depletion of natural resources to the point that it can't restore? Because it's happening here, and at the global scale. So it's the biggest fear that I have, is that we're going to get to a point that we can't have hope and that can be real. And now I don't. It's just a fear I have because I see it here where I've been raised. But at the same time, if you take ecological systems, there are so many young people that are restoring fish ponds. They're restoring we just got 1 million gallons of fresh water back to be restored from the city and county of Honolulu that was taking it for some crazy reason down the sewer pipes, I guess, to create more pressure of beautiful fresh water. My mother, I have old pictures of her horses drinking fresh water on top of salt water because the springs were so alive. And fresh water is so alive. So we have that memory, at least I do, but to measure against where young people are today, I mean, they're everywhere. They're in the forest, they're in the watersheds, they're just moving forward. I'm not saying they don't have fear, but they're not paralyzed, and they're still moving. And it's just, I think that's the best investment for the earth, is to allow them the tools to become navigators for the earth.
Right. And we talk about the tipping point. We need the turning point so we don't get to that terrible cliff. But it is happening. We've lost so much. You know, Hawaii has a few monk seals remaining. They may have reached the point of no return. And every year, you think, have the young ones coming along exceeded those who've been lost one way or the other? They're right on the edge. In the Gulf of Mexico, there was a relative, another kind of monk seal that existed when I was a child, but they're gone.
Completely.
The 1952 was the last one that was sighted. They used to be throughout the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea. There's still a few of another relative over in the Mediterranean, but they're not alone in terms of just, you know, they're here now. By the middle of this century, they could be gone, or they could be more robust and on their way to prosperity. There are more whales today than when I was a kid.
And turtles.
And more turtles.
Yeah.
And there are at least some birds that might have been pushed to extinction, but there's still snowy egrets. They almost disappeared, but we stopped killing them. We have to do a better job of not killing things. And I don't think we have to teach kids, don't kill things. We just have to teach them not to kill things.
Just to respect them.
Instead, we celebrate the killing. It's pervasive. You see toy guns everywhere. You see people celebrating killing wildlife instead of caring for nature. It's how do we still have this habit of dominating. But all of that is the problem, but we see solutions too. Places where you start really protecting nature. Recovery is possible.
You can get 40 plus sharks under your canoe.
Yes, you can.
You want-
Let's go for it.
All
More
right.
sharks.
Claire is asking, will any of the future young crew members be from the outer islands?
Yeah.
I mean, they are for sure.
Hōkūleʻa.
We were, you mean outer islands, you mean outside of Oahu?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, COVID in our minds forced us to do what we don't like to be. That's exclusive. But we had a responsibility to our families and our communities that we're going to keep our crew members safe. So the ability to go back and forth to the islands was not possible for us to function. So we had to kind of cave in to. We did three dry docks in the canoes in COVID. One major full reed lashing in Hokulea, 5 miles of line, but we had to use Oahu. We had to use Oahu people because we couldn't exchange through the outer islands. So the plan we have a medical team that advises us, and we've done a good job because nobody has been able to trace any COVID infection to the canoes so far. But that came with a lot of restrictions and that we normally don't do. The answer is yes. The question is when. So the numbers are dropping down. We're like kind of holding our breath, and we have crew lists of outer island members that are essential and vital to the voyage. We can't do it without them, but it's just been able to keep the whole environment safe. And so we're hoping that within a couple of months, and maybe not even that, if the numbers drop where it's new normal, whatever they want to call it, and we get the right science to make the right decisions, we're definitely going to go back to the getting the pools. I mean, our goal is always crew members from each of the islands, and we just haven't been able to do it in the last 2 years because of COVID.
Yeah. George, if you do down, what will the physical effect be on the navigators? I've read where you stayed away almost for the entire voyage to team. We need to have more per.
Okay, Liz, I couldn't hear the whole questions. I couldn't understand because it's kind of broken up.
That one?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry, we'll try again.
try
Okay.
again, Liz.
If the canoe is slowed down, what will the effect be on the navigators? Will you need more navigators per voyage?
We have different pathways to training. We are, on one hand, the answer is no, and on the other hand, it's yes. And so we have teams of individuals training themselves, and we're delegating a lot of the training to teams. And what's really interesting about like our new captain's pools, and there's no substitute for competence at sea, but what's really awesome about our young ones is that they are adopting one of their number one values in training is that's caring for each other. Take care of each other. And that may seem trivial, but it's not. It's where everybody's safe, because in our training program, because of COVID, we couldn't stay along. And, we've got to turn over the leadership to younger generations in the next 18 months. And so for voyaging to be sustainable, but the issue was we shifted from how good can you tie a bowline at night to how good are you caring for each other. And so what's happening is that you're having this younger pool of people coming up that knowing that everybody's safe, everybody's going to be taken care of. We're, no matter what, we're going to share. Because my comment to them was, hey, we need you to be new captains, but none of you are qualified to go deep because you don't have enough experience in the storms. But if you take care of each other, you can do anything. So that notion of malama, the notion of caring, needs to be spilled over to everything else we do with families and with communities. So it becomes our nature to get to taking care of nature. And so, and on the other piece, Liz, what we're doing is, so we have pools of navigators that will train as teams on the voyages. When I mean slow down, it doesn't mean as just calm down so you can spend more time watching nature, but it stays within the framework of our voyaging schedules. The other is we're calling it more immersion navigation training. We're putting out young people on the canoe, with just 3 people on the canoe. And the reason why we do that, you got to work hard. You got to, if you're only 3 people on the canoe, and you're going to sleep 8 hours and you're up 16 hours, it means only 2 of you on the deck. It requires reliance and support. It requires enormous amounts of care for each other. And in the navigation, by the way, you need to pay attention, because if you don't know where you're going, then you don't know where you are. So the immersion training is a new thing we embedded this year, because COVID forced us to when COVID said you can only have 6 people on a boat, we said fine. so we're now dumping out our 20-year-olds out there and to go out with only 3 crew members, 24, 36-hour voyages, and then we're going to reduce it to one person. Train outside of here in Hawaii, because that's the way you're going to get immersed into nature, because you have to. And so we're really excited about raising the bar, about having higher aspirations for training, and the immersion piece is really about the discipline that Mao always showed, but we never really figured it out. That discipline of paying attention to nature. And so many ways, this what happens in the immersion is it becomes habitual that our young people look up at the sky. What's the nature of the clouds? Where's the stars? Are they lined up? What time is it? I mean, it's it becomes a habit of paying attention to nature. And I think when you get to that point, you are in the wave. You become the wave, therefore you're a navigator. And that means in the wave of the whole natural system. And so we're using the canoe deck to put individuals in that situation where they are forced into the immersion. But after a while, I'll tell you what's going to happen. That quiet time with just you and nature is going to become the best time. And so we're really excited about the new challenges, because COVID pushed us in that direction, but we used it to adapt it to a deeper way to train and a deeper way to get closer to nature. Does that make sense at all?
Absolutely. It absolutely does.
Does to me.
Well, we've gone pretty far over our allotted time today, and we probably should go ahead and close and let you go and get ready for the big launch, and especially with our little internet instabilities today. But before we do go, I wanted to say a huge thanks to you and to all of our guests who hung in here for today's little mishaps of the internet, and of course our wonderful producers at Ocean Elders. Water truly connects us all, and we are so grateful. So thank you.
Yep.
And we're going to be back in March. And until then, please remember, protect them.
As if your life depends on it, because
It does.
It does. Thank you, folks. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
You guys stay safe and healthy, okay?
We're so grateful.
Sylvia, I'll see you in Keiki.